Hello, BookTube. We're back with the sexy backlighting from my library tour of 2022, book by book, shelf by shelf. So we are on the last comfortable shelf of this bookcase here, the middle bookcase in this wall. We'll do the transverse book first, and it is this battered old hardcover collecting the Ashendon stories of Somerset Maugham. An ugly cover, composite cover that never works. Why is that mountain? Why is that lion laying on a mountain? Why are those buildings in the middle of forest? Composite covers. Ugh. But I found this last year and have been working my way through its contents and absolutely loving them. So I'm very happy that I did. I'm almost to the point now where I have enough of these old vintage hardcovers. I love them. I absolutely love them. They might be in rough shape. I had to reinforce this, but they have that particular lightness that comes from rationed paper, wartime or austerity paper. I love the feel of it in the hand. So that is the only transverse book. So then let's attack these sideways. Oh, great. Okay, fantastic. These are from Thames and Hudson. This is a very battered book in its own. This is Chronicles of the Pharaohs. This is an oversized, color illustrated book about the Egyptian pharaohs. You get some of the more notable ones on the back there. And these volumes, Thames and Hudson did a few of them: Chronicles of the Pharaohs, Chronicles of the Czars, Chronicles of the Popes. And they're fantastic, absolutely fantastic. As works of history, they're fantastic. They look at first, when you glance at them, like they're coffee table picture books, but there's a lot more to them than that, a lot more meat on the bones. I have loved looking through this thing, which is why it's in the dirty shape that it's in. I could clean this up quite a bit. Very glad it's here. I'm very glad to have it, but it's a history book. It's a straight up history book. It doesn't have any special emotional significance or anything. I just really like it. I use it all the time. Whenever Ancient Egypt comes up, I go to this thing. But since it's just an ordinary history book, it doesn't belong here. We're going to go through that whole refrain again. Oh no. Okay. All right. This book actually came up. This actually came up. This is the Annotated Dracula. This is the one done by W.W. Norton. I don't know if Harvard has done a companion or competing Annotated Dracula. But this is edited by the great Leslie Klinger, and it is the text of Dracula with tons and tons of annotations. There's Silence of the Lambs right there. Tons and tons of far-ranging, very well-illustrated annotations all throughout the volume. I love these annotated volumes. Absolutely love them. I have all of them for any book that I really care about, with only a few exceptions where I either didn't get it from the publisher or I haven't ever come across it secondhand. I would love to come across a volume of this in hardcover, but I will definitely take the paperback. And as I mentioned in an earlier video, there are probably 10 different editions of Dracula in this room. And unlike the Chronicles of the Pharaohs, where I look at it, I take one look at it and think, okay, space is at a premium here. This really shouldn't be in here. I wouldn't think that about any one of all 10 of those Dracula versions. But that's the particular psychology that rules this room. This little book room is for my favorite books. It's for active, loved favorites, and they don't have to follow any rule. Okay, then the next block we've got is from Science Fiction Book Club, and these are all their John Carter of Mars volumes. Edgar Rice Burroughs' great story about an Earthman who is mysteriously catapulted to an exotic version of the planet Mars, full of ancient dying cities and exotic races, and he has tons of adventures. He's at the beginning of the stories anyway. Burroughs makes him a kind of a Superman because he's on Mars, which has a much lower gravity, so he is much stronger, able to leap and all that. I would very much appreciate these stories a lot more if Burroughs had remembered that, if that had been an active feature of them. But it's far more John Carter's swordplay that matters than the fact that he is, superhuman among all of the Martian inhabitants. But this is the first volume, A Princess of Mars, with a great Frank Frazetta cover that is printed all by itself. It's the only one that is. Then we have Mastermind of Mars and A Fighting Man of Mars, another great Frank Frazetta cover. I think this was a present from one of you. I'm pretty sure that it was. I think I mentioned once that I didn't have all of these, and so one of you sent me the one that I was missing. I think I'm missing another one, though. I think there's one they just didn't do. Here we have The Gods of Mars and Warlord of Mars, another great Frank Frazetta cover. There, where a naked John Carter is leaping upon the Martian apes, intent on abducting his incomparable Dejothoris. And then finally, Thuvia, Maid of Mars, and the Chessmen of Mars, where again you have the full Frank Frazetta cover right there. Just lovely, fantastic things. My favorite copies of John Carter to go back to and reread, as I do, far more often than I should, as I do. Okay, then we have a volume from Oxford University Press. This is a recent thing. I don't have the pub sheet doesn't appear to be in it, but this would have been while we were talking to each other. Yeah, 2015. Oh no, that wasn't before. That was right before we started talking to each other. This was Richard Lansdowne's selection of Byron's letters and journals. Fantastic stuff. Byron in his letters and journals is endlessly readable. To the point where I would almost recommend them to the 21st century that is a complete stranger to his poetry. Get to know the man that way first, and maybe you'll be intrigued enough to read the poetry. That's completely reverse of what it was for 200 years. But this is a better. I have the Leslie Marchand volume that this updates, and it's a better volume. Much as I hate to say it, because Leslie Marchand is great. Okay, then we have a great novel, an American historical novel, Rabble in Arms, by Kenneth Roberts, with an N.C. Wyeth cover. This is all about the very tumultuous early days of the American Revolution, the retreat from Quebec, the naval war on Lake Champlain. That if you ever want to be bored silly, get Mark and I talking. Mark Richardson of Richardson Reads, get him and I talking on the naval war on Lake Champlain. You'll want some of the wine that's at the table, definitely. All the way to the defeat of Burgoyne. So hard scrabble years for the American Army, for the American forces, and this was a famous book by Kenneth Roberts. He was once a very famous author, and this did really well in many editions. It's amazing. I mean, in the 21st century, you have to get used to this sort of thing, but it's still amazing to me that Kenneth Roberts is completely out of print and completely forgotten. He's one of the many authors where I think that is just amazing. That is so weird. Actually, come to think of it, would I be wrong in saying that the John Carter novels of Edgar Rice Burroughs are also currently out of print? I guess it's a variation of what I always say. People who go to bookstores in the 21st century literally have no idea what they're missing. They just don't know. Okay, then we have an anthology. I found this at the Brattle just comparatively recently. This is edited by Sean Dunn, and this is the Ireland anthology. And it's really good. We've seen a couple of other Irish literature anthologies in this little book room. This one is really good because it concentrates on small snippets in order to triple or quadruple the number of authors that you're getting a sample of, which is one of the great things for anthologies, is not only to give you a great little bit of literature, but also to introduce you to someone you might want to follow up on. This does that better than any other Irish literature anthology. Okay, and we'll finish up here with a book that is currently in the news. Very much in the news. This is The Silmarillion by J.R.R. Tolkien. This is an old yard sale copy that I grabbed and heavily reinforced because I love this cover. This is the version of it that I fell in love with. This is the version that I love. And this is the cobbled together legendarium that undergirds the world of The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. These are stories that take place thousands of years before the events of The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. Almost none of the characters carry over to the more famous books. This is the mytho-history of Middle-earth, and it's a weird book. I mean, obviously, you can tell from that description that it was never intended to be a narrative. But there are parts of it that are constructed as narratives. There are parts of it that are older than others. And the reason that it's in the news is because the long stretch of the Silmarillion is set in the second age of Middle-earth. The third age of Middle-earth ends with the events of The Lord of the Rings, the destruction of the One Ring. But there were two ages before that, and a large chunk of the action in this book takes place in the second age, and the second age is the setting for Amazon's new The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power series that is the most expensive TV series that's ever been done. $1 billion has been spent on it. And it has been causing a huge ruckus in the commentary space, online and off, because it's 2022, there was never any doubt whatsoever what the showrunners were going to do. They were going to force in chokehold diversity. Chokehold because if you don't do it, total strangers who don't know anything about you will start leveling the most serious personal insults conceivable at you in public. Just because you haven't done something, just because you haven't said something, or in this case, because someone else has done something and you disagree with it. You think this is jarring. This is not what is in the book that you are allegedly adapting because you love it. So that has caused a huge, huge controversy that's only ongoing. That controversy is just going to get worse when this thing rolls out in September. And I imagine between now and September, we will get full-length trailers. We have a teaser trailer now. I imagine we'll get full-length trailers, and that will just stoke the controversy. So we'll be talking about this, I'm sure. I've done a number of videos on the Silmarillion. I absolutely love it. I think the parts of it that are dramatically effective are incredibly dramatically effective. They read almost like mythology. I love the book, and that puts me in a camp. Unfortunately, I don't want to be in a camp, but it puts me in a camp when it comes to this whole Lord of the Rings of Power controversy. Because this is not a case of people adapting a work because they love it. This is a case of a group of people adapting a work because they want to change it, because they want a head on the wall, they want a trophy, and that's soiling and irritating. So I imagine I will mostly keep quiet on the subject, but definitely when the series comes out, I'm 100% sure that there will be a new paperback, or maybe many paperbacks, of the Silmarillion and the Lost Tales with cover artwork stills from the show. I'm sure that the show has pulled out all the stops, and one of those is marketing through books. So the Silmarillion will start to get more traction in bookstores, which kind of puts it in my wheelhouse. I'm not looking forward to it at all. You'd think I would be happy. If you'd asked me 10 years ago, would you be really happy if someone made $1 billion adaptation of parts of the Silmarillion so that more people would know about it? I would have been overjoyed, but that's not the purpose of this adaptation. The purpose of this adaptation is not to celebrate Tolkien. It's to get lots and lots of people to pay a blood debt, or to re-examine how awful they are and admit it, preferably in public, maybe in church. That's bad motivation to do anything. That's a bad motivation, certainly, to adapt a beloved piece of literature. But the worst part of it is, as I mentioned in an earlier video, the worst part of it is that if I object to that obvious motivation, if I object to the horrible, compromised breech birth that results from it on the screen, if anyone objects to that, they're going to be lumped in with the worst elements of the people objecting to it. The worst elements are the people saying, I don't want any diversity. I don't want to see anybody that doesn't look like me on the screen. You're going to be lumped in with them if you don't like it. if you object to it, if you think it's bad, no one's going to pay attention to your point-by-point criticisms, because we have entered a stage in the 21st century where the very first thing you do, if someone disagrees with you, the first thing you do is level what in my day was the most serious personal insult you could level at someone. You had to have a yard of proof, and you were still very careful about doing it because it was incendiary, the most slanderous personal insult you could possibly level at someone. Now that is done in the 21st century. That is done literally as hello. I have, no exaggeration, I have literally had emails from strangers saying, hi, I've noticed on your channel that you're quite, and then fill in the blank with whatever bigotry. And I'm wondering if we could maybe collab about this. I've had emails like that. So I know that when people talk about that, they're not exaggerating. I've had emails like that literally opened with a bone-deep personal insult, and then just wanted to continue the conversation. So that is definitely what's going to happen. If this is lined up, the production company has already made it clear that is, in fact, their strategy for dealing with criticism, is to level unbelievably deep, unbelievably personal insults at anyone who criticizes their series for TV. So we're going to be talking more about the Silmarillion. I have a feeling there's no way to avoid that. But at least we're done with this shelf. We're done with this particular shelf. So we'll move on to the next one next time. Thank you, BookTube.